Greetings and salutations, young true believers. All right, so we talked about two of the bad theories, that is, namely divine command theory and moral relativism. There's one other bad theory, ethical egoism, but we're not going to dive into that. Apart from libertarians who are, who express their allegiance to the thought of Ayn Rand, nobody takes that theory seriously. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about the good theories. The theories that pass muster and are extremely influential. So, um, one of the most, and arguably the most influential theory in ethics today is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism. Um, Obviously, shares a Latin root with, the word utility, meaning something useful, right? So, utilitarianism, as as we know, it was formulated in the late 18th, early 19th century by an English philosopher named Jeremy Bentham. And Bentham, in my humble opinion, might be the most underrated philosopher to have ever written in English. Um, a brilliant guy. Now, utilitarianism, you can see what might be called proto-utilitarianism all the way back in the ancient world with the writings of Epicurus. But as we know it, by and large, it was formulated by Jeremy Bentham. Now, it's funny that most of the credit for the formulation of this theory goes to Bentham's student, John Stuart Mill, but the major tenets of utilitarianism were laid out by Bentham. Well, what are the major tenets? What Bentham wanted to do is he wanted to formulate a theory of ethics that was that suited the needs of a people who were entering an industrial age. Bentham's writing right as the Industrial Revolution is coming in, and he could see all the changes that the Industrial Revolution is bringing to English society, right? Um, he also wanted a moral theory for people that was not rooted in belief in the existence of God. He wanted a theory that any human being, regardless of religious affiliation, they could subscribe to this theory and and see that its tenets apply to them. So the most basic assumption of utilitarianism is that we naturally seek out pleasure and avoid pain. Bentham identifies a pleasure with the good and pain with the bad, right? And this is what's known as a theory of hedonism. It's a hedonistic theory, right? It's a pleasure-based theory. Now, for Bentham, any pleasure is just as good as any other, right? Bentham thinks that when people talk about higher and lower pleasures, this is a way for the upper classes to denigrate or look down their nose at the pleasures of the working class. Um, if if your idea of a good time is, an evening meal and, song and dance, that's perfectly fine. I mean, if your idea of a good time is, a night at the opera, right? That's fine too, right? But don't kid yourself that one pleasure is somehow superior or greater to another. Um, it's just a matter of degree, right? On Bentham's, actually it's not even that. It's a matter of opinion on Bentham's view, right? Whatever makes you happy. Now that having been said, Bentham doesn't think that you should pursue every pleasure, and I talked a little bit about this in the last video. Shooting heroin might be great, might feel great, but you shouldn't do it because the long-term consequences are bad, right? And that leads to another important utilitarian consideration: consequences. Um, Philosophers been debating a long time. What makes a what makes a given action right or wrong? Is it the intentions behind the action, or is it the consequences of the action? Now, the guy that we're going to talk about next, Immanuel Kant, he's decidedly of the opinion that it is consequences that make, or excuse me, intentions that make an action good or bad, right? What did you intend to do? For the utilitarians, it's definitely consequences, right? Now, why would it be consequences? Well, because we can measure uh, consequences, right? We can quantify consequences, right? Um, how many people were adversely affected? How many people lost their job? How many people were killed, right? We can measure that. I can't measure your intentions, and I can't know your. I mean, I can only know your intentions obliquely by seeing your, by gauging your behavior and through the consequences, right? So it's the consequences that make an action good or bad, and that's what matters. Um, Now, really quickly, we need to talk about moral principles, right? A moral principle is a general statement that ties a fact-stating premise to a value-stating conclusion. So, for example, if it's a fact that Susie Q takes care of her elderly grandmother, and the conclusion of our argument is Susie Q should take care of her elderly grandmother, then we need a moral a moral principle that is, again, a general statement that's going to tie the fact-stating premise to the value-stating conclusion, right? And in this case, our missing moral principle might be something like, we should take care of our dependents, or we should take care of our elders, right? So that's a moral principle. The utilitarians, they abide by one moral principle and one moral principle only, and that moral principle is that action is best that tends to promote the greatest possible happiness for the greatest possible number of beings, right? Now, beings, plural. Utilitarianism is unique among the great moral theories in this respect. For virtue ethics, for deontology, for care ethics, right? Generally speaking, those theories apply to human beings and no other entities. For a utilitarian, though, and Bentham lays this out in great detail, the most important moral question is not whether or not a being can reason or talk. The most important moral question is, can the being suffer? And if the being can suffer, if it's sentient, in other words, if it experiences pleasure and pain, then you have moral obligations to that being. You have a moral obligation to not make it suffer, right? That means, obviously, we have moral obligations to the non-human animals, and that's something new under the sun, because that was a radical idea in the late 18th, early 19th century. Speaking of radical ideas, the first philosopher in the modern world to call for consideration of the rights of gay people was Jeremy Bentham in the late 18th century, and he argued it strictly on utilitarian grounds. Who are they hurting? No one. Then we have no business trying to interfere with their everyday lives, right? So in order to try to suss out, with some exactitude, with some precision, which action is going to lead to the greatest possible happiness for the greatest possible number, Bentham develops what's known as the hedonistic or philosophic calculus, right? And it's a list of 7 considerations that anyone should take into account when they're deciding how to proceed with morally speaking, right? So the first consideration in the hedonistic calculus is intensity. How strong is the pleasure? The second one, duration. How long will the pleasure last? Third, certainty or uncertainty. How likely or unlikely is it that the pleasure will occur? Fourth, and this is a great English word, we don't use this word anymore, but propinquity, right? And that means nearness in time. How soon can we expect the pleasure? Here's another great English word for you, fecundity, fruitfulness. How likely is it that this pleasure will give rise to more pleasures? Number 6, purity. To what extent is this pleasure mixed with pain? And lastly, extent. How many beings will benefit from the pleasure? Now, it was immediately objected, and Bentham anticipated this objection. Hey, Jeremy, nobody actually reasons like this when they're trying to figure out what they should do. And Bentham's response is genius. He says, yes, they do. Yes, they do. You may not write up a checklist with all 7 considerations and tick them off like you tick off boxes in a checklist. But let's say, your big moral dilemma is whether or not to major in nursing or to major in accounting, right? You would run down this checklist in your mind, maybe not the same day, maybe not even the same week or month, but eventually you would consider all of these considerations in conversation with yourself and thought, and you would make your decision about what to do based on where you came down on this list of 7 considerations, right? Again, Bentham, extremely underrated philosopher in my estimation. So the next video, I'll talk about the exact opposite of utilitarianism, deontology, and that's the theory of Immanuel Kant.